Hello, how are you? In today's video, I'm going to talk to you about whether pork is bad for you. Is pork really high in calories? Can you include it in a weight loss diet? Can people with heart problems and those with type 2 diabetes eat pork? Does it really increase inflammation? And after all, is it considered a red meat or a white meat? What are the benefits and what precautions should you take when consuming pork? Stay with me until the end. You're going to love this video. First of all, if you're new here, take a moment to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. There are new videos every day, and I know you won't want to miss them. I'm making this video after receiving many requests in the comments with people telling me that I always talk about beef, I talk a lot about fish and poultry, and I really almost never talk about pork. And people wonder if it's contraindicated, and that's why I don't talk about it if it's bad to consume. So I decided to make this video for you now, explaining a bit more about pork. Many people ask me whether pork is a white meat or a red meat. Since pork contains myoglobin in its composition, which is that red pigment, technically it is a red meat, although depending on the cut, it can be white. But yes, it is indeed considered a red meat, much like lamb or beef. It is certainly not a white meat, such as fish or poultry, generally speaking, of course. Regarding the calories and nutritional composition of pork, analyzing 100 grams of pork, a medium cut, the amount of protein per 100 grams is about 29 grams of protein, so it's a very significant amount. As for the amount of carbohydrates, it's practically non-existent, just like with all other cuts of meat from different types of animals. The amount of carbohydrates is always very low, very small. Now, an impressive fact, when it comes to the amount of fat, it really depends on the cut of pork you use and the area of the pig you choose. In 100 grams of pork belly, there are 50 grams of fat. 100 grams is 3.5 ounces. In 100 grams of pork tenderloin, the prime cut, there are 5 grams of fat. 50 versus 5. The amount of fat can vary by up to 10 times. So you should always prioritize the leaner cuts to be healthier, obviously, with fewer calories, which of course is what everybody wants. I've already mentioned pork tenderloin, and another really nice and tasty option to cook in a pot, make a stew, or even bake in the oven is pork loin. So if you stick with these two, you'll be better off. Be careful with those pork cuts that are heavily marbled with fat, where you can actually see the lard, that white marbled fat. Also, watch out for those cuts that have a thick layer of fat on top. Pork belly is like that, a very thin strip of meat and then a lot of fat. So be cautious with these fattier pork cuts. Because for some people, the taste of fat is good, but it will lead to the problem of weight gain. Another thing people often ask me is whether pork is really a safe meat to eat. Because traditionally, when we think about possible problems with pork, even though there are also many good aspects, the very first thing that usually comes to mind for most people is worms. Because since we were kids, in school, we learned about those worms, the swollen bellies caused by parasites, tapeworms, and the connection with pork. But in reality, this only happens if the pig is contaminated. It really depends on the hygiene and sanitary conditions of the place where the pig is raised. And the truth is, sometimes it can be a bit hard to be completely sure about the hygiene and quality control of that meat. Secondly, it has a lot to do with how the meat is cooked. If you always eat pork that is well cooked, well done, made in a pressure cooker, roasted in the oven, thoroughly roasted, it's no use poking it with a fork and seeing blood come out. If the meat is well done, above 165 degrees, 175 degrees Fahrenheit, the probability of you getting infected is practically zero, so there's no risk. The big issue is that some people eat a lot of sausage, which sometimes hasn't been cooked or hasn't been cooked enough. Pork burgers, sometimes the burger you eat even has pork in it and you don't even know it, you think it's just beef, but they put pork in there to add more flavor and to lower the cost. Because pork is usually the cheapest, and the meat is thick and you order it or cook it rare, and there's that contaminated meat in the middle, which can cause you some problems related to these parasitic worms. So, in terms of parasites, it really is a more susceptible meat, but tapeworms can also be found in undercooked beef. It's a different type of tapeworm, another kind of parasite, but in any case, pork is more prevalent in terms of other parasitic worms it can carry, as well as other bacteria. To sum it up, if you always eat pork well cooked, thoroughly done, the risk drops to practically zero. Some people often ask whether pork really causes inflammation, whether it is truly inflammatory, if it can be harmful, and whether it should be avoided after surgery. So the question is, why does this belief exist in the first place? First, there's the issue that pork is often consumed raw or undercooked, which can cause some type of diarrhea or discomfort. And for someone who is recovering, this can worsen their health condition even more, especially when the surgery was for a serious health issue. Another point is that pork has a higher ratio of omega-6 to omega-3. Omega-6 is a more pro-inflammatory fat, so yes, it can be a bit more pro-inflammatory depending on the amount you consume. So, if you have had surgery or are about to have one, pork might not be the most recommended type of meat to eat. Another question is whether pork causes cancer or increases your chances of getting cancer. If you look at fresh pork, the answer is no. The big issue is that many people consume bacon, sausages, processed meats, smoked meats, those with nitrite, nitrate, or cured with curing salt. And these, yes, nitrite, nitrate, and curing salt can promote the development of cancer in some people. They are harsher on the body and can cause some type of mutation or uncontrolled cellular differentiation. So, to make it very clear, what causes these problems related to pork is not the pork itself, but the processing or the fact that the meat contains some of these agents. For example, if we make a comparison and you are using dried beef, it also, in the same way, because it undergoes this processing and contains nitrates, is just as harmful as pork, bacon, sausages, and other processed meats. So, to put your mind at ease about this, always choose to consume one of those cuts I mentioned to you. Pork tenderloin, loin, always from fresh meat. And now I'm going to talk a little more about pork and its relationship with cardiovascular problems and high blood pressure. Does pork really raise blood pressure if it's fresh meat? As I just explained, the answer is no. The big problem, once again, is that many people associate pork directly with ham, bacon, sausage, and other processed meats. These pork byproducts that are made from mixed pieces of meat, a lot of fat, various additives, nitrite, nitrate, and smoked flavoring. So together it ends up becoming almost a recipe for problems. And this, usually since it contains a lot of monosodium glutamate, can raise blood pressure. The amount of fat is very high to increase palatability, and it's a very saturated fat, a bad fat, from these unhealthy products that can raise your blood pressure and cause problems for your heart. So if you've had any heart problems and thought you could never eat pork again, the truth is that if you choose lean cuts like pork tenderloin or pork loin prepared grilled or roasted in a pressure cooker with very little added fat, it can still be a good option for you to enjoy from time to time. Now, in fact, pork belly, ham hock, bacon, those fattier cuts of meat are definitely not recommended since they can easily work against your health goals. For pregnant women, I want to leave a warning here. Be careful with pork consumed outside the home, because sometimes you order a pork loin steak or pork tenderloin, a leaner cut. So the first piece is very white, well cooked, but when you cut into the second piece, it's raw, it's a bit pink. So in the middle of the dish, you might notice that it's not fully cooked. If you're cooking at home and you're sure it's well cooked, made in a pressure cooker, you can see that it's thoroughly cooked. Or if you cook it for a long time, add plenty of water, wait for it to dry out, really make sure it's well cooked, then that's fine. When eating out, it's important to be even more careful because for pregnant women, it's not recommended to eat raw pork, as well as sausages and processed meats, since they can pose risks. I talk about this in my video about the worst foods for pregnant women. If you choose, as I mentioned, a good cut, a lean cut of pork, fresh, straight from the butcher, not those processed byproducts, but the actual pork meat itself, the real thing, then what are the benefits it can actually bring you? It is a high biological value protein, a source of B-complex vitamins. If you choose one of these leaner cuts, the amount of fat will be very similar to the amount of fat in beef. So it really is possible for you to eat pork a few times a week as long as it's a lean, fresh cut without any problem. Once again, be careful with undercooked meat, even if it's a lean cut or fresh meat, and avoid as much as possible those processed meats, industrialized, cured, smoked, or processed products, because those are really not recommended for your health. Now tell me down below if you usually eat pork. Is it for personal reasons that you don't eat it? Are you afraid to eat it? Is there any issue? Let me know here, and if you have any healthy recipes, leave a comment below, like the video, because that really helps me out. And if you're new here, take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. There are new videos here every day about the benefits of foods, what is bad for your health, what is good for your health, recipes, you won't want to miss them. See you next time, bye!